Hey, Verballers, a quick note from our friends over at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Do you think that driving drunk or drug impaired is okay? The truth is that your reaction times slow way down when you're under the influence. You're not only putting yourself in danger, but also everyone around you. Remember, if you feel different, you drive different. If you drive high, you'll get a DUI. Learn more at nhtsa.nitsa.gov.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrand. Joining me, as always, over there in New York City, my good friend, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I've got all sorts of excitement coursing through my veins, Ty, and I don't know how much of it is artificial. I don't know how much of it is because we had our first real Saturday of the college football season, but I got to tell you, Ty, I'm excited to talk about actual football things that have happened instead of previewing, and even more excited to probably pronounce names incorrectly these next couple weeks. Our annual Johnny Manziel start of the season.
That is what we do well here on the Solid Verbal. Welcome. If you're just finding the show, you can always find all of our content out at solidverbal.com, where you can listen for free. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual hotspots and social media. Mm-hmm. And don't forget to check out the subreddit, reddit.com/r/solidverbal, where they do such a revelation. Great job. Absolutely. Okay. So week one, mostly in the book. Mm-hmm. General takeaways after the opening weekend here. What are your thoughts?
It's super difficult, no matter the opponent. It's super difficult to conclude a ton after week one, just because it's the first live action for most teams, not Hawaii or New Mexico State or Colorado State, who are our game number 2, which I guess if we really wanted to talk about those teams, we could. But it's tough because you're going to get more penalties than usual. You're working in a new system or new coaches, or you're shaking off a lot of rust, especially on offense. I think defense is a lot more about effort. So if we want to look at certain teams and how they've replaced defensive stars or situations, that I think makes a little bit more sense. But there is reason to be confident depending on opponent, but there's not as much of a reason to fully panic after week one, right? Unless somebody crucial got hurt or has decided to leave, something like that. So we are going to try, Ty, being the operative word, to be somewhat measured about panicking or celebrating in either direction.
That's my takeaway. I don't think anyone's as good or as bad, maybe with the exception of Kansas, if I'm being honest, but beyond them, I think no one's as good or as bad as they looked in week one. And typically, you see a lot of improvement between game 1 and game 2, except your Colorado State. We'll get to Colorado State. But you typically see a lot of improvement in that 1 week period. So teams that we see a week from now could look pretty drastically different from what we saw on September the 1st, when a lot of these games started kicking off. Why don't we do this, Dan? Before we get into all the action from week 1 of the 2018 season, let's start off where we so often start. Let's play the Reverbs again. 408-VERBAL-1, 408-837-2251. We got dozens upon dozens of calls from people watching the games in week 1. Here is what y'all had to say.
I've waited 8 months for this day. May the college football season be great and the Reverbs be better.
Hi, this is Joanna calling from New York.
Hey, this is Owen in Kansas City.
Hello, Solid Verbal Nation. E. Robert Parker here from Minneapolis.
Hi, it's 4:30 Japan time, and I just got done watching a 17-and-a-half-hour college football gorge fest all night, and it was beautiful.
I just wanted to offer up a name for this weekend. I think Dead Man Walking Weekend, it just fits right, because for every group of 5 team, stop, they're all already dead.
College football's back, which means that for the next 3 months, we're all going to live in despair unless you're an Alabama fan.
What a game. Auburn's D held on at the end. Pass rush was great. Tip of the cap to Washington. Browning played his tail off. That's truly what college football is about.
I just turned 30, and I seriously question how many more Auburn football seasons my body can handle.
Hey guys, new listener. My son just introduced me to you guys. I thought you're great. Washington fan calling about the game yesterday. I was in attendance, and I wanted to tip my hat to the Auburn fans. Really treated us formally, and I appreciate that.
I don't know how to feel about an Ole Miss offense that is balanced, but it seems pretty good to have a running back go over 200 yards.
And I decided to take my daughters to their first Texas Tech football game today, and it turns out that not only did we get reseated into an Ole Miss section, but I'm thinking my daughters may be fans of Ole Miss now after that meeting.
I'm going to have to switch to whiskey to forget these 5 Billy Greer touchdown passes.
Michigan fan here. 14-0 Notre Dame, barely halfway through first quarter. Current status, want to die. So glad to have you back, college football.
I just want to know how long it took Ty to go from excited about the Michigan win to, oh my gosh, we almost lost that game, and nitpicking everything.
There was a lot of debate when he transferred from Mississippi, but I gotta say, Shea Patterson did a great job for Notre Dame tonight. Go Irish.
Well, hopefully nobody tells Jim Harbaugh that the backup is better than the starter.
This is Matt attending a wedding, watching the Penn State game on my phone next to a random App State fan.
Whoa! Game week 1. App State, Penn State. What a game! Going all the way from London. That was amazing.
Gotta think Sparty struggled with the Utah State Aggies just to get that patented Michigan State disrespect back on them.
Hey, Texas. What are you doing?
Fear the ugly flag helmet of the turtle.
Does Texas have a Maryland problem?
Hey, first time, long time. Is Texas back? I'll hang up and listen.
Stop, Herm Edwards. They're already dead.
So, Arizona. How's that Kevin Sumlin era going?
It's 11 p.m. on the West Coast, and I'm watching a white dude with dreads carve up Navy as the Hawaii quarterback. This is awesome.
Good news, Fighting Irish fans. With a late strip sack by Jerry Tillery, Kelly's boys sent old Jim Harbaugh and his khaki pants back to Ann Arbor with a loss. Next week, they take on the Cardinals of Ball State. They should be no match for Kelly's boys, or dare I say it, his men.
Woo! There you go, Dan.
A lot of pent-up energy there, Ty.
A lot of energy. A lot of energy.
I like that.
Thank you.
Makes me feel good.
To everyone who called in, thank you to our boy Taylor, who does such a great job putting that big old mishmash together, that scramble of her baller messages. Thank you so much. He was at the Maryland game yesterday.
Yeah. The man behind the men.
Where do we want to go first?
Taylor.
What game to you was the headliner?
So it was Auburn, Washington. To me, just because of the stakes, just because of the ceilings, the perceived ceilings of both of these teams, two teams, at least with preseason rankings, which are fun and I like, in the top 10 on a neutral site. That to me felt like the game most worth talking about, even if the results won't necessarily have a huge effect come November, December.
Auburn 21, Washington 16, a bit of a defensive slugfest here.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn gets a score late, which gives them the W in a really big opening week contest. They played this one in Atlanta. Dan, it felt like Washington was hanging on for dear life. At least at the beginning of this game, it took them like a solid half to break into any kind of normal rhythm. The one thing that I was struck by early on, and even though he did settle down later on, it really did look like Jake Browning was in over his head here, at least early, right?
Sure, yeah. And I think a lot of that credit should be given to the Auburn defense and the energy in the building. The Auburn fans really showed out. And to Washington's credit, they weathered it because they go down 9-0 in about 9-10 minutes. And it was like, what? Washington is shaken, whatever. Then it turns out Washington's defense did a really great job limiting Auburn, forcing Auburn into mistakes, and the Washington offense didn't really get going. There was the great catch by, I want to say it was Quentin Pounds, the acrobatic one-handed thing in the front of the end zone right near the half.
Crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But ultimately it was red zone decision-making that probably defined this game for both teams. And I don't know if on the Washington side, whether it was, Jonathan Smith leaving, because they were really good in the red zone against ranked teams last year. Washington was, but they struggled. Both teams had kicking issues. And I know Washington fans, and I know this because of a very small sample size of my younger brother who I watched this game with, are beside themselves. I don't know if it was a Jonathan Smith thing because Washington was really good in the red zone last year, and obviously both of these teams had kicking issues, but impressive day from both defenses. But I will say this because of a sample size of one, but I imagine it's a much broader opinion from Washington fans. That non-targeting call against or not against Jake Browning, or not against, I think it was Big Cat, whatever, for Auburn on the hit on Jake Browning. Bad non-call. He completed the pass, but it went to fourth down, and it was a turnover on downs, and they had to give it back to Auburn. But there were opportunities. That game did not come down to that non-penalty. It was just a bad non-call, but there were opportunities in the red zone that went wasted, and Washington was up in the fourth quarter. So it wasn't as if that was the deciding play on an otherwise sterling day for Washington. So it sucks. I'm not going to tell you, to get over it, but there were chances for Washington that went unfulfilled.
Well, you mentioned the red zone trips. So Washington's 6 red zone trips, only 1 touchdown and 3 field goals, but they missed a field goal. They fumbled, especially in the second half. It did come back to bite them because they had ample opportunities to, I think, take full control of the football game, and they just couldn't capitalize. Auburn, on the flip side, 5 trips into the red zone, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and of course they had that miss early, which was way to the right. But all in all, I thought much better, much more efficient. I'm still a little bit unclear as to what the Auburn running game is going to look like this year. It didn't strike me as the most efficient aspect of what they're potentially going to do this season. We knew that coming in, that the running game could be a bit of an open question. And I don't know if this football game did much to answer any of that. But with that being said, Washington is pretty good up front. And it does stand to reason that they could hold down a good rushing team like Auburn, normally a good rushing team like Auburn, in a football game of this magnitude. So I thought on the whole, both defenses, as you said, did a really good job. Washington, it just took them a while to kind of settle into rhythm. Was very unimpressed by Jake Browning, with the exception of a couple big throws that he did make, to his credit. Sure. And Jarrett Stidham, I thought, looked really good. Was really poised in this football game. Made a lot of good decisions.
He got happy feet a little bit. He did some Jarrett Stidham happy feet stuff.
A little bit. Yes. But all in all, a really big win for Auburn to start the season. We've talked here quite a bit about how their first opening game against a non-conference opponent hasn't always been a great display of what they bring to the table, but this was a good effort from them, as again they go on to win by a 21-16 margin. The only other thing I'll add here before we move on and talk about some other games, I know I mentioned how if Washington loses this football game, I think they're dead in the playoffs. I don't know if I stand by that statement, if only because this was a close football game. It would have been one thing if they lost by like 2 or 3 scores, but this was a game that truly could have gone either way. A few things going a different direction.
And the good sign for both teams is defenses looked good, Auburn's especially up front, but Washington in the secondary looked very good, harassing Auburn receivers, although Ryan Davis had a nice day. And Washington traveled without their starting left tackle, Trey Adams, but they protected Jake Browning pretty well, all things considered, given the talent on this Auburn defense. So if I were a Washington fan, it's going to get easier. This is the most difficult defense they're going to see all season long. And if I'm an Auburn fan, I come away very happy that the Tigers won, but also I am a little bit worried about the predictability of Gus Malzahn's offense at times that got them into, if you remember last year against LSU, that's what, Auburn had chances in that game. And it was just run, pass,
Yeah.
run up the middle, and it was disheartening. So I think they're going to get past that. But mostly good defensive football. I want to see better red zone from both
Absolutely.
situations. All right,
let's go to Notre Dame, Michigan. This one was.
Wait, is that a flag? Nope, not a flag. Wait, is that a flag? Nope, not a flag.
You had a problem with this.
America had a problem.
So, all right, hold on. Let's set the table. Notre Dame wins 24-17. The game was on NBC. And this wasn't exclusive to NBC, by the way, though I know exactly what you're going to talk about. ESPN did something similar with their new like Chiron, i.e. bug.
The bottom line bug.
Bottom line. Yeah, where I think what we're both talking about is this new movement, this new design trend where we've just decided that we're going to put a big yellow box in the lower right-hand corner. Typically, that spot has been reserved for penalty flags. You know, they flash up the yellow. It says penalty, and that's your indicator as a home viewer that there's been a flag on the play. But now what NBC and even to some extent ESPN were doing is they just kept the yellow up all the time to indicate down and distance, or in ESPN's case, some sort of programming note that they thought the home viewer might be interested in.
You're right. NBC left it up yellow for Michigan because maize is one of Michigan's colors, and it went to like a navy blue when Notre Dame had the ball, which makes more sense. It should have been like a white or gray or something like that for Michigan. We are talking about this to lead off the game because there are a lot of bad things to talk about with this game. Mostly watching Michigan on offense. So yes, it was annoying. Let's get our TV broadcasting design stuff cleaned up.
We got to get Richard Deitch on this.
Yes. My question to you, Ty, is as somebody who's paying a lot of attention to Notre Dame this season and all other seasons, what did you think from an Irish perspective of what transpired last night in South Bend?
Well, you know, my rub on Notre Dame has been Brandon Wimbush. And I thought he looked better. I think it's clear that he took a step forward in the offseason. What's unclear to me is if that's sustainable or if they figured out a really strong game plan for going against Michigan and they executed it to perfection. Now, I'm not trying to throw cold water on this. I thought he was really good. He was better in the first half than he was in the second. And it may just be that old hats such as myself need to adapt to what Notre Dame's new offense is going to look like. It's probably not going to be the kind of year, just like last year, where you drop back and you throw it 35 times like Notre Dame has done in the past. It's going to be.
I like how you call yourself old hat in comparison to Notre Dame fans.
Well, but hey, here's what I'm saying.
No, I know. I get what you're saying. I get the broader point.
This is a different kind of offense than Notre Dame has typically run. And it may just be I need to get used to that. Brandon Wimbush is very talented with his legs. I still think he leaves a lot to be desired as a passer. However, he made some big throws last night. And if he can continue to make those big throws without making dumb throws, which he tried a couple times last night, then there is no room for me to be all that critical. They looked really good in the first half offensively. I'm curious as to what they do as it relates to the running game beyond Wimbush. And that might have something to do with a Dexter Williams suspension, which could improve, could fix itself as we go through the season. But otherwise, the defense to me was truly the story. I came away wholly impressed by the front seven for Notre Dame. They disrupted the game plan completely and looked good in the secondary. Just a really good effort on the defensive side of the ball, which should assuage some of the feelings that many Notre Dame fans had with Mike Elko going to Texas A&M.
Yes, and first of all, can you even believe a pretty good defensive front pushed around the Michigan offensive line? Have you ever even conceived of such a possibility?
Why, I never.
Okay, so if we're going to go glass half empty on Notre Dame, or actually this is more glass half full, this is going to be the best defense they face all year long.
Agreed.
They have USC, they have Stanford, they have Florida State. They're not going to be anywhere near as good as this Michigan defense is.
Agreed.
So if there are any concerns that Notre Dame's offense very clearly got worse over the course of the game, right? I mean, the second half offensively was
very clearly got more conservative. Yeah.
Yes,
for sure.
The play calling, the adjustments, the tweaks, whatever, probably were not as, it was Jafar Armstrong looked really good early, but then was shut down for the majority of the game. And that's okay, because that's Michigan's defense, which is one of probably the best 3 or 4 defenses in the country, even on the road. To win against that team, to hold Michigan to 10 offensive points yourself?
Yeah.
Because it was the long kick return touchdown. It was a successful night for Notre Dame. The Wimbush night was very Wimbushy, where he had moments where you're like, all right, this guy's putting it all together. And then there were moments where like, he is still doing some things he did last year.
He's thrown a lollipop without stepping. He just bent his knees and floated it into the sky. Yeah.
Yes, there were times where you're like, all right, he has a pocket to step into, and he just threw it off of his heels. And so that'll happen. And again, you beat Michigan and that defense, that's a successful night. I wouldn't overthink it. If I'm Michigan, I'm not going to crazy overreact to game 1 with a new quarterback. But the issues that lingered last year and the year before offensively of basically, we are going to build an offense around smashing mouths. Okay, who are going to be the ones smashing mouths? The offensive linemen. Great. How are they? Not good. I don't care. Let's keep trying to build around this toughness, put 7 offensive linemen on the field and 3 tight ends, and see what happens if they randomly get better against a good team. And there is a certain amount of stubbornness to this offense. And Shea Patterson is talented. Shea Patterson is probably not the answer for somebody you want running this sort of power system, given his specific strengths and athleticism. The skill talent for Michigan is nowhere near where it should be to run a system that can make up for stubbornness, I would say. And that to me is got to be, and I know for a fact it's disappointing for Michigan fans, because this defense did everything it could to win this game against a pretty decent Notre Dame offensive line. They got a good amount of pressure and forced Wimbush to beat them with their legs. The secondary was good. The secondary forced field changes. Short of that, they probably should have had that pick on that long Notre Dame touchdown pass. But it has to be just so disappointing for this defense to look at no improvement and change and evolution on this offense for Michigan.
I just kept thinking,
could be good by the end of the month, Ty.
I just kept thinking of that scene in Ghostbusters 2 when Vigo, I think it was Vigo in the painting, when he tries to overtake Dan Aykroyd's body but only gets like halfway there. Right. That's the Michigan offense right now, because they've got a quarterback in Shea Patterson who very clearly is comfortable outside the pocket. He wants to get outside the pocket. He's very accurate. Doug Flutie loves how accurate Shea Patterson is outside the pocket. We've got an offensive system, though, that, as you said, still kind of wants to be more smash mouth, and they couldn't run the football. So a bit of a tight mismatch there that I think Michigan has to try and figure out.
If other coaches are open to adjusting and evolving and succeeding, what Nick Saban's offense looked like a few years ago compared to what it looks like now, it's night and day. And if Michigan has that self-awareness to say, we don't have the linemen, we don't have the tackles to play straight up, run RPO stuff, spread the ball around, do tempo drives, do whatever it takes to get a defense uncomfortable. Because if there's anything that this Michigan offense can't do, defenses are just not on their toes. And that's why you get, whatever it was, Jerry Tillery, it was Tavon Coney that was teeing off, and he was ridiculous. I think he had double-digit tackles. Notre Dame played with a certain amount of confidence because they knew they were not going to be out-schemed by Michigan. And they'll be fine, but it's worrisome long-term.
The only other game here that I want to mention, since we're talking about the Big Ten, Penn State, App State. Oh, boy, that was a little bit more interesting than I think any of us bargained for. You've been on the App State train for as long as I've known you.
And finally, when I get off the train, they give a pretty good team all they can handle on the road in a tough place to play.
Scheduling App State is like going to a haunted house.
Yeah.
Really. This one went to overtime. Penn State wins 45-38. Offensively, Penn State looks good. They did look out of sync for a good chunk of this game. They end up getting the ball back down by a touchdown with like a minute and 45 left. Trace McSorley goes 5 of 6, throws a game-tying touchdown to KJ Hamler. Nice game, by the way, for KJ Hamler. He hadn't played in like 2 years, I think, since tearing the ACL. If you weren't
last year,
if you weren't familiar with that, fear not, because Kevin Kugler and Matt Millen were getting paid by the mention on the Big Ten Network. They made that widely known. The line still has some troubles for Penn State, which is confusing to me because I was under the impression that this was going to be the best line they've had in the Franklin era, but whatever. Not a great defensive performance for Penn State. Outgained 451 to 434. App State moved the ball at will. Zach Thomas for App State picked the secondary apart. Remember, this is a Penn State defense that just returns 3 starters from a year ago. They are going to get better on defense because they've got so much talent, but I don't think we should be gung-ho on Penn State. I've never quite subscribed to this notion that they're a dark horse playoff team. Not because I'm not cheering for it, but because I know that this defense is going to take a little bit of time to just congeal and find its new sensibilities here. So 45-38, Penn State wins in overtime. A heroic effort from Trace McSorley to bring the team back from the precipice of an opening week loss to App State. But just another instance where App State plays against a major Power 5 opponent and gives them all they can handle.
And also, shout out to Penn State for playing 3 really good quarters of defense. And then, like Michigan State used to do, like, we have another quarter? I've already taken off my pads. What, App State put up, 28 points in the fourth quarter to force it to OT?
It was ridiculous.
So, yes, Penn State will improve. I think a lot of where Penn State succeeded these past couple of years is how much depth and talent they had built up defensively. And it's showing that they're a little bit thinner right now because they're starting, not necessarily new players, but guys that were depth last year. And so they had a ton of versatility last year on defense that they don't necessarily have right now. I think they'll build that up. They'll get there. It was nice to see Ricky Slade got in there at running back and showed some things. KJ Hamler, you mentioned. Micah Parsons did well for Penn State when he was in there. But yeah, I think this is more App State fighting, well coached, focused, and did a really good job to stay in this game and almost pulled it out. But Penn State will be fine. I think you're right that even with Trace McSorley, even with some of the skill talent, the offensive line didn't look great, and the defense is going to take a minute. So they will beat good teams, but to get into January and that top 4 is probably too much.
Let me stay in the Big Ten if I could for a second here, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
We have breaking news, actually.
Oh, really?
Texas is not back, Dan.
Oh, God. Ty, I have it right down. I have it right here written down. Texas is back. I'm crossing this out.
Texas is definitively not back. Sorry, Texas people. I had to. It was too easy.
Texas, the Big 12's Big Ten team.
Maryland wins 34-29 over the Texas Longhorns. This one had an 87-minute weather delay as we got to the fourth quarter. 10 penalties for Texas, 8 for Maryland. Sort of a sloppy game. I did want to throw out a solo dude alert. A solo dude alert. There was a gentleman for Maryland who, in his first college action, had a 28-yard rushing touchdown on his first touch. On his second touch, had a 65-yard receiving touchdown. And then on his third touch, a true freshman, a 20-yard passing touchdown, Dan.
Pretty good, Ty. Efficient.
Jay Sean Jones, welcome to college football.
Yes.
Nowhere to go but down, my man, but a pretty good way to start the season. Statistically, this game was pretty even, but Texas turned the ball over on its last 3 drives and ultimately ended up shooting itself in the foot. Really an underwhelming way to start the year. Maryland, of course, beat Texas a year ago by 10 in that game down in Austin. This year, the game being played at Landover at FedEx Field, our boy Taylor was there taking pictures and talking up the game a bit on our Instagram account. But I thought Maryland looked pretty good. I felt somewhat redeemed by the fact that offensively, it seemed to bring a lot of new wrinkles now under Matt Canada to the offense. Kasim Hill looked pretty good in his starting role coming back from injury. Saw a little bit of Tyrell Pigram, but was really encouraged by Maryland.
As you should have been. Maryland was creative. And I really thought at a certain point that Texas, with the delay, with how well they played, I think right before halftime, that the talent would win out and they were just going to take over. The depth, the speed, and credit Maryland, especially defensively, for holding up really well. I think they shut Texas out in the fourth quarter, and it at least shows when Maryland has a healthy quarterback that they can be fine. I don't know how big of a deal it is right now to limit Texas's offense, because as much as Sam Ehlinger gives you, making a couple of dumb mistakes, they still can't figure out running the ball. The offensive line did not look particularly good. There's something about Texas where Mac Brown, Texas, that it seems that with all the time in the world, they bring in the number 2 recruiting class. There's talent, there's time. They have good coaches that they just can't. There just aren't answers. You watch Texas and you're like, why don't you have an answer for this?
No.
And that's what's sort of confounding given the advantages that Texas had. But I think more so, this game was about Maryland holding on, staying focused, and hopefully it lasts, because Maryland, without a good quarterback, without health, they fall apart pretty quickly. So if you're a Maryland fan, I hope for you and I hope for these players that there's more consistency. But the story here is why can't Texas just be decent?
Yeah.
Why can't they be pretty good early on in the season? Why can't this offense have a more clear, drive to drive identity? It's weird.
Very, very weird. Let's round out the Big Ten here very quickly, if we could. Ohio State was in action. They win 77-31 over Oregon State. Mm-hmm. Ohio State had 13 drives in this game, 10 of which went for touchdowns. A tough break for Oregon State, being so their backup quarterback had to come in after only 6 plays when their starter went down with a concussion. Otherwise, really just an explosion of statistics here for Ohio State. A good opening stanza here for Dwayne Haskins with 5 touchdowns and over 300 yards. Mike Weber had 3 touchdowns. Nick Bosa had 2 sacks and 2 fumble recoveries. Everything that you would expect from Ohio State against a team like Oregon State, which only won a singular game last year. That is what we got in this football game for Ohio State.
I really liked the Deo.
Yeah.
Ryan Deo. They didn't run Dwayne Haskins into the ground. Dwayne Haskins is really good.
Yeah.
Dwayne Haskins might be excellent, Ty.
Yeah.
And I know this is Oregon State. I know their defense is nowhere near good enough to hang with Ohio State. I also want to say Oregon State's offense was pretty good, especially given that it was a backup quarterback. And I thought the game planned well. And I thought Artavis Pierce legitimately is a sleeper running back now. He was not highly recruited, and he was running by this very fast, very elite Ohio State defense. And I think there are positive things about Oregon State that I did not foresee.
I jotted that down too. That 31 points kind of caught me off guard. Not that they were close to winning, mind you, but still not bad.
No, I mean, that shows focus. It shows really good game planning from Jonathan Smith, to not go into the teeth of this Ohio State defense, to get the ball to some speed and space. I would come away from this game as an Oregon State fan saying, you know what? I'm a little bit more excited than I was. I'm ready for the Jonathan Smith era. And Ohio State's going to be very good, and Nick Bosa is a complete monster. But I came away from watching what I did of this game thinking, all right, I like what I've seen.
Absolutely. So Ohio State with an easy win in game 1, and I agree with you. We'll have to follow the Haskins situation, but he might be really good.
He's excellent. I'm real excited.
Yeah. All right. Wisconsin 34, Western Kentucky 3. We had Jonathan Taylor tailback with 2 long first half touchdowns.
Yep.
He finished the day with 145 yards and those 2 scores. The only other thing of note here that I jotted down is that it was a clean frame for Alex Honeybrook, who escaped the game. Probably the wrong way to phrase it, but no interceptions, which was a knock on him from a year ago. They're going to need more of that from him this year if they want to go places against a tougher schedule.
Yes, and the defense did not allow the Hilltoppers into the end zone.
Michigan State 38, Utah State 31. This was a sloppy game, Dan. 9 penalties for Michigan State. Felt like they were on the verge of losing this football game because they kind of were, but in the end, they're able to outlast and win by 7 against a Matt Wells team that was clearly fired up and looking to try and score an upset here in week 1.
Yeah, Jordan Love had a really nice game for the Aggies, and for whatever reason, Michigan State and running the ball still since at least Jeremy Langford a few years ago, not fully clicking, even against a decent Utah State team, maybe decent Utah State team. Kind of a bummer, but there are, recent examples of Michigan State looking sloppy in week 1 and sort of getting their act together. So, yeah, good for Brian Lewerke. Nice day.
Iowa 33, Northern Illinois 7. Iowa was without both starting tackles and looked a little bit out of sync on offense, but defensively they were outstanding. Woo! Especially along the line, they owned Northern Illinois on their way to winning by 26 here, Dan. This was a nice win for them.
Yeah, Iowa's defense looked filthy, looked really, really strong. And I'm looking who's coming to Iowa City, and I've got it circled, Ty. 3 weeks, Wisconsin coming to town. I know that game was ridiculously bad for Iowa last year, but this is shaping up now. I mean, I know they go to Penn State. It's going to be a pretty nice schedule after this Wisconsin game that they help. It's pretty nice. They missed the Michigan schools, no Ohio State. This Iowa defense is going to tear people apart.
They got to figure out their drops on offense, though. Receivers.
As I overreact to a week 1 really nice defensive performance. No, I think there's enough there and enough experience on this defense to conclude that Iowa on that side of the ball is going to be pretty scary.
On Thursday, Northwestern 31, Purdue 27. Big game for Purdue freshman Rondale Moore, who broke the school record for total yardage in his first game as a freshman. But otherwise, on offense for Purdue, a bit of a rough go. The Singularity had 3 interceptions in the first half and got benched. And the turnovers ultimately just really killed Purdue. They couldn't dig back out from that. Clayton Thorson got back out there. It was good to see him. I thought he looked reasonably sharp for his first game back after injury.
He was okay. I wasn't freaking out about him, but that's okay. It's week 1. Jeremy Larkin did a nice job stepping in. Justin Jackson, who's no longer, obviously has exhausted his eligibility. Rondale Moore, you mentioned, I love these new all-purpose weapons, and whoever Rondale Moore juked out of his shoes is still probably wondering where Rondale Moore went. But nice day for the Northwestern defense ultimately. I don't think Northwestern scored in the second half and they still won. So that's nice.
All right, let's round out the Big Ten very, very quickly. Indiana wins over FIU 38-28. Rutgers 35-7 over Texas State. Illinois 31-24 over Kent State.
Drive for 6, Ty.
And finally, Minnesota wins 48-10 over New Mexico State. PJ Fleckdan, to borrow some phrasing, has found God on the corner of Zach and Onestad.
Okay, that's your one Frey reference for the season, Ty.
I tried.
Ballsy to use it week 1, but that's your choice.
Let's go over to the Big 12 here. Oklahoma 63, FAU 14. For all the time we spent talking about how good Lane Kiffin's offense was from a year ago, and for all the time we spent talking about Kyler Murray in the offseason. Kyler Murray was very good in this football game. He could be outstanding throughout the course of the rest of this regular season. The story was the Oklahoma defense, which I thought dominated. Again, what could be still a really good FAU offense. Devin Singletary just never got going. Might be foolish to overreact in week 1, but if you take a look at that Oklahoma schedule moving forward, it's gettable, Dan.
Yeah.
There is some potential there for Oklahoma if they can pull this thing together. It's there, man. They could do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take too much away from running and throwing all over FAU other than the fact that, wow, they look like they were in a rhythm. They look like they understood everything together with a new quarterback and some new skill talent. Kyler Murray looked excellent. It's hard to take too much. I mean, this FAU defense wasn't all that great last year, but I'm not going to hedge against it because I was super impressed by Oklahoma, and Rodney Anderson had a nice day. Kyler Murray didn't even play all that much. He only threw about 10, 11 passes, and Hollywood Brown looked very good as expected, getting like 5-7 yards behind FAU DBs. So yeah, Oklahoma is, as you mentioned, who they have UCLA next week?
Yep.
Which, oh boy, UCLA. Oh boy. Yes, not a lot to take away from the FAU standpoint because they'll be fine once they get to conference play, I assume. But yeah, Oklahoma, what a day.
Look good. West Virginia also looked good. They knock off Tennessee 40-14. Will Greer with 429 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 2 of which go to our boy David Sills, the fifth, who went 7 for 140 and 2 scores of his own. Not a great setup for the Volunteers, starting 2 true freshmen at cornerback.
Yeah, they got picked on a lot. There was a lot of Will Greer, like, I'm just throwing it to the sideline because I know cornerbacks are there and they are not going to do much.
Also, since we talked earlier about little broadcasting quirks, it appears to me that CBS bought a drone that they used exhaustively for some of those aerial shots of the stadium.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else caught this. Oh, it looked good. It was different from their normal template and really just a lot of dramatic shots of Bank of America Stadium.
Tim Jordan was a bright spot for Tennessee, and it's hard to compete with Will Greer and this West Virginia offense when defensively there are just too many issues in the secondary. Tennessee couldn't get a pass rush at all.
No.
And when you don't have a pass rush and you don't have confident corners, that's when you give up 40 points. And I saw a story like at halftime, Dana Holgerson and Will Greer and a bunch of players just sort of watched other games. Just sort of chilled, like, what's going on with Auburn, Washington? All right. Just real.
They listen to the podcast.
Casual.
Yeah.
I won't say overlooking Tennessee, but in a good, peaceful spot in their mind.
Just keeping it loose, right?
Yes. And also shout out to Kenny Bigelow, the transfer from USC, who, when healthy, because it was injury issues at USC that ultimately killed him, real disruptive and can be a force for this West Virginia defensive line. And it showed particularly early on.
All right, TCU 55, Southern 7. Sean Robinson, new starting quarterback for TCU. 3 first-half touchdowns to 3 different receivers. Ran for 2 more touchdowns of his own. Had 5 total touchdowns in the first half. The first half here, which is a nice sign for them. They've got the defense. We think they've got the defense this season. And offense is where most of the questions were for the Horned Frogs. If they can get that quarterback situation ironed out, buttoned up in a better place, they got a big game 2 weeks from now, neutral siter in Arlington against Ohio State, which I am thrilled to watch.
Yeah, I don't have much to take away from this TCU game.
All right. Elsewhere, let's round out the Big 12. Oklahoma State 58, Missouri State 17. The Cowboys finished with 732 total yards. Taylor Cornelius had 5 through the air. They also ran for 436 on the ground as a team led by our boy Justice Hill, of course,
the
going
long
over
arm of justice.
100 yards. Baylor 55, Abilene Christian 27. A little concerning that Baylor allowed 466 in total yardage against a team named Abilene Christian, but okay. Nicholls State, I mentioned at the top, they knock off Kansas in overtime 26-23. Iowa State and South Dakota State was straight up canceled because of the weather.
Yep.
And
Lightning.
Texas Tech lost to Ole Miss by a 47-27 score, which we can talk a little bit more about here as we transition over to the SEC.
Did you mention Kansas State barely sneaking by South Dakota?
I was going to go there next, Dan.
Okay.
27-24, huh?
Yeah. Needed a comeback to do it against South Dakota, a relatively late comeback to do it. It's week 1. This is something Kansas State has not been so lucky against in previous years. So winning a game is, listen, get your W. That's fine. Alex Delton and Skylar Thompson basically split things, and neither were all that good. Alex Barnes was fine, but yeah, real ugly opener for Kansas State and the state of Kansas overall. Ty.
Yeah.
All right, you want to talk Tech Ole Miss?
I want to introduce all y'all to the 2018 SEC season, but first, why don't we say goodbye to summer with Casper and take advantage of their limited time Labor Day offer, Dan. Labor Day. Their expert team of engineers over at Casper, They design and research prototypes and test their mattresses to meet the needs of all kinds of sleepers and provide balance of comfort and support that's just right. All their mattresses use premium foams that relieve pressure and help align your body so you fall asleep easily and wake up feeling refreshed. You could try it for 100 nights in your home, risk-free. We both have them. We both love them. Check out Casper today. The unboxing experience is like really cool. I actually got in trouble way back when for talking too much about the unboxing and not talking about the other benefits of the Casper mattress, but they do a great job. We both have them. When we say that you should go out and buy a Casper, we're not just reading talking points. We mean it because we both have them. They're comfortable. They fixed my back. It could fix your aching back if you've got one as well. Go on out to Casper.com/savings. That's different. Casper.com/savings. You will get 10% off any order with a mattress purchase. It's a special offer. It expires on September the 3rd. So you got to get out there. Got to take quick action. Casper.com/savings. You'll get 10% off any order with a mattress purchase before September 3rd. Terms and conditions do apply. The only other thing here that I want to mention is the NFL is about to start up. And so if you're listening to our podcast, you might be interested in some other podcasts. We would suggest the Dave Dameshek football program. He's a veteran in the sports media game. Dave Dameshek, impeccable knowledge of the NFL and a signature lighthearted rapport with his guests, many of whom happen to be some of the biggest names in the league. He and his guests operate on a strict no jive policy. Only honest, unfiltered opinions are allowed. What is it really like in the huddle? Who are the best trash talkers in the league? Who's the best cornerback Antonio Brown has ever faced? From Cam Jordan's favorite Will Ferrell movies to Dak Prescott's take on the most handsome NFL quarterbacks, the Dave Dameshek football program tackles the game of football and the game of life, Dan.
Oh,
the game of life. As the preseason unfolds, tune into the Dave Dameshek football program for some bold predictions, quarterback rankings, hot takes on the latest stories ahead of the kickoff here in 2018. Subscribe to the Dave Dameshek football program. It's available twice a week. Listen now on your favorite podcast app or on NFL.com, Dan.
Ty, you mentioned with Casper, balance, comfort, support. It sort of feels like what Jordan Ta'amu has around him as for options to give the ball. So Ole Miss can run the ball now?
Apparently that's what I'm being told here.
JUCO transfer Scotty Phillips goes for 200 and is ridiculous and fast and fun. And then, of course, Ta'amu also has DeMarcus Lodge. DK Metcalf had I think he was the early recipient of a great pass from Ta'amu. AJ Brown had a nice day. This Ole Miss team is going to give up some points.
Yep.
But they're going to find the end zone a lot. And McLean Carter goes down for Texas Tech early, which obviously hampers things. And backup was not all that good. But I think the story here is Ole Miss and the issues they're going to present to teams moving forward on their schedule.
Tech still doesn't play defense, Dan. Just wanted to throw that out there. In case anyone was wondering, Tech still does not play defense. They forced a lot of turnovers.
They would have given up 60 a couple years ago. Now it's just like 47.
They forced a lot of turnovers a year ago, which was promising, but still giving up a lot of points in this game. Ole Miss is prolific on offense, and they will be fun to watch. They can't go to a bowl because of the NCAA infractions. However, they can still play and give teams fits, and they will.
Sure.
Also, Matt Luke looks a little bit like Ole Miss's version of Ed Orgeron. He is very passionate about Ole Miss football and seems to get it. Seems to be putting together a team that's got a lot of firepower. So I root them on. I'm excited to watch Ole Miss now as we forge ahead here in the SEC season. Should be fun.
Yeah, and this is year one. Year one is generally not that bad of dealing with a bunch of turnover. We'll see what happens moving forward, but enjoy the ride.
Mississippi State, 63. Stephen F. Austin, 6. The Bulldogs scored on the first play of the game here, and that was indicative of where this game was going. Keaton Thompson with 7 total touchdowns in this game. He was a big deal coming out of high school. He had 5 touchdowns through the air, 109 yards rushing, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. The only issue for him is passing accuracy. I think I
didn't watch the game, so I don't have I don't know if there were drops. I don't know if it was just
he had a bad run to start the second half. I think something like 8 straight, I want to say, incompletions to start the second half, and finished 13 of 31. But a guy with a lot of potential. Nick Fitzgerald's obviously going to play at quarterback, given his experience in that system and the skills he brings to the table. But it's nice to see that they've got another guy who's obviously got a ton of potential. There is also a chance that Mississippi State is going to obliterate Kansas State next weekend in Manhattan, Kansas.
Again, I think the jump from week 1 to week 2 is significant, but from what these two teams showed, and listen, the competition for both of these teams wasn't great. But with Nick Fitzgerald presumably coming back, I don't know that current status. I know he was suspended for this game. We'll see what happens. I'm suddenly more intrigued, even if it was just a smaller opponent, with Joe Moorhead and this Mississippi State team.
So let's just talk about Alabama here.
Yeah,
we've waited far too long. 51-14. This game was not a crock potting, I think, like we typically see with Alabama. This was a flash frying, Dan.
Yes.
Bama scored 3 minutes into the game. They led 28-0 at half. Louisville couldn't run. They only ran for 16 yards as a team. Puma Pass looked, I thought, promising throwing the football. That was a bright spot, a takeaway for Louisville.
At times, yeah, for sure. Especially given the competition, yeah.
Otherwise, Alabama is just loaded again. Tua looks damn impressive at quarterback. Jalen Hurts did play. They gave the ball to what felt like 42 different rushers in this football game. And look, we looked at the point spread before the start of this football game and said, wow, that seems like a lot, but yet it never quite is enough when you're talking about Alabama. We should just lock them up in this football game. They look so good on both sides of the football. And here we go again. It's just going to be more of the same, a continuation from what we saw last season.
Yeah, Alabama is playing a slightly different sport than other teams because they have a way better head coach than everybody else at the moment. So yes, Tua looked very good. The fact that they can say, all right, Damian Harris, you have this drive. Josh Jacobs, you have this drive. Najee Harris, you have this drive. And then we're just going to go from there. I thought a big thing was Devontae Smith stepping up really nicely. Jalen Waddle is a new name. It's sort of smaller slot guy who's great in special teams, stretched the field really nicely. Jerry Jeudy was good as expected as he steps into a more prominent role. And, the defense, when you have that luxury of not needing to bring a ton of players up to the line of scrimmage to get pressure or tackle people and stop the run, whatever, the secondary ran pretty wild, which was nice to see if you're an Alabama fan, considering how at least new in these roles a lot of those guys back there are. And, Alabama wasted no time. It was, as you said, not a crock potting. It was flash frying. It wasn't, 14-0 at the half. It was 14-0 when you blinked in this game.
Yeah.
So Alabama, we talk about not taking major takeaways, but Alabama's different than the field.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be different if what we saw in week 1 was any different than what we saw in like week 13 last year. But it seems like a continuation. It's not a new season. It's just the next season, if that makes sense.
What did you think of the end with Maria Taylor? Did you see that clip?
Vaguely. Remind me.
So at the end of the game, your very standard sideline reporter comes over, asks the coach a couple questions about, what went through your head here and, what's your takeaway from this game? Things that Nick Saban has been through 1,000 times. And she asked him the most obvious question, which was, because Tua started and had more pass attempts and was relied on way more in the passing game, what was it about Tua's, I'm paraphrasing here, what was it about Tua that separated him from Jalen Hurts? Because obviously Alabama is the country's biggest and most premier program, and the quarterback is the biggest and most premier position, and Tua comes in the biggest and most premier game at the end of last year and wins it. And so Tua gets the nod. She asks him why, and he just freaks out. I'm tired of this question. We've got 2 good quarterbacks. You got to ask new questions. It's it was such Bush League from Nick Saban. It was so stupid. And it was Maria Taylor just asking the obvious question that Nick Saban should have an obvious canned answer for. We like both guys. Tua really showed a lot of things. We really think, when you have the luxury of 2 great quarterbacks, you got to take one. And we think Tua gives us a great chance, but we're really excited for what Jalen Hurts gives us. And just get off the field. it's just it's so petty and childish. It was so dumb to watch.
All right. Georgia wins 45-0 over Austin Peay. We saw both Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. They both looked pretty good. We will talk a lot more about Georgia next week because they've got a tough one on the road.
Yes.
Against South Carolina. South Carolina won 49-15 over Coastal Carolina. Jake Bentley looked pretty good. Didn't throw any interceptions, had 4 touchdowns. The ground game was clearly more than Coastal Carolina could handle. What I took away from this football game, and I only watched a little bit of it here and there, but South Carolina showed that it can go faster than it did a year ago, but they very clearly did not want to give much away here. They very clearly wanted to keep their cards close to the vest, knowing that they've got Georgia on deck.
Yeah, good sign when you are playing against an outmatched opponent is, how clean do you look in the first half? How quickly do you get into a rhythm? And South Carolina up 28-3 at halftime looked sharp, which is an encouraging sign moving forward when they're only going to get more comfortable in this offense.
All right. Vandy looked good on defense. They win 35-7. Kentucky led by only 1 at halftime and turned it over 4 times, but pulled away in the second half to beat Central Michigan 35-20. We also had Missouri winning 51-14 over UT Martin. Drew Lock had 4 more touchdowns. We had Florida winning 53-6 on the arm of Felipe Franks, who had 5 touchdown passes. And Arkansas may have a bit of a quarterback controversy on their hands as Ty Story comes in off the bench, might have taken the job from Cole Kelly. He looked pretty good, I thought. 55-20 over Eastern Illinois. Curious to see if he is the outright starter in week 2.
Yeah, we shall see.
Texas A&M wins 59-7 over Northwestern State. I just wanted to throw this out there from Ryan, who tweeted us saying that literally the entire second half of the A&M broadcast was about Jimbo's contract, including graphics saying, where were we 10 years ago? So my first round draft pick already paying serious dividends here.
Good value there, Ty. You grabbed good value even with the number 1 overall pick.
All right, let's go to the Pac-12, Dan.
Okay.
Rough opening weekend for the Pac-12.
Yes. So we can start at the very beginning real quick because there's less to talk about there. But Utah struggled early, but ultimately Tyler Huntley had a nice day as they dispose of Weber State. Stanford, a really nice day offensively for KJ Costello, less so for Bryce Love, and even more so for, and I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Ty, because I don't know if anybody has. I was talking to Yogi Roth yesterday, and he said, actually, it's JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Arcega?
Because his family is from Spain.
Oh, right.
And I don't know if he prefers that.
Is this going to be like that thing when Jorge Posada said that his name was really Jorge Posada?
Is that true?
Yeah, that's 100% true.
I did not know that. Yeah. And I am willing to say JJ Arcega-Whiteside all year long because we're all about differentiating with dumb things, Ty, on the Solid Verbal.
Sure.
So our pal JJ goes completely off, goes for over 200 yards against a good San Diego State defense. Great, they lose their defensive coordinator to ASU, but still, this is a talented San Diego State defense. He goes off and they shut down Bryce Love and they sort of pick their poison, and their poisoned them. And through the air, JJR just throwing it up to him was successful. He's physically dominant, and they host USC next week. So that sets things up with USC looking, especially in the second half, like they could be pretty dangerous.
Okay.
That's all. Stanford looks good. And Stanford didn't look like garbage in week 1 or 2 or 3 so far.
Bryce Love wasn't great, but that's okay.
No, that's true.
That's okay. I mean, he just had 29 yards on 18 carries, but I thought it was actually far more promising that we've developed this KJ to JJ connection.
Yes.
Okay.
Next,
what else?
You want to talk about the Colorado schools?
Well, I want to talk about Oregon.
Colorado State.
I want to talk about Oregon.
Okay, we can get to the Colorado schools later. Okay, let's talk Oregon. New head coach.
58-24. What was your takeaway on the Oregon side?
1, Justin Herbert, really, really good. And his game-ending stats belie the fact that he had like 4 or 5 drops from this receiving core. They don't have a guy, capital G guy, at running back like they've had for the last decade or so, or even further back to Jonathan Stewart, but they should be all right because the offensive line is pretty good, if not very good. We'll see. It's Bowling Green, so it's hard to take anything too serious away from it, but this offensive line should be a strength of theirs. Defensively, they took a little while to get going, but forced turnovers and the most encouraging thing was the lack of penalties from Oregon. They were the most or second most penalized team on the FBS level last year, and they looked a lot cleaner at home against an overmatched opponent. So that's good. They didn't give that much away, but Justin Herbert is going to be upset at times at, having the skill to be an A quarterback and having what looks like a C+ receiving core this season. So that's my takeaway.
Okay.
They don't have anybody until Stanford at the end of the month to really sort of figure out how they stand, or where they stand. But Oregon, it's encouraging, but there are definite hiccups and bruises on this win.
Cool. Again, the final score, 58-24 over Bowling Green. Let's talk about USC quick. They outscored UNLV 24-7 in the fourth quarter to make this one look a little bit more padded than it was in the early going, at least. Took them a little bit to figure things out. I was impressed with JT Daniels. He can throw.
Same.
he's got an arm on him that is going to develop nicely. USC, to me, has like so much potential this season. It's just an odd year where we didn't have the expectations up front. That will bode well for them. Your final score here was 43-21 over UNLV, Dan.
The exciting thing is, yes, JT Daniels, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, first game, I think they went to the same high school, but first game already looks like their best receiver. Number one receiver as a true freshman is pretty spectacular, especially when you have a true freshman at quarterback who, yes, he did take some time, but eventually got comfortable. And it was the little things with him, like even not looking like necessarily the best quarterback in the Pac-12, to see somebody that young step into the pocket, play with that sort of rhythm and confidence is insane, Ty.
Yeah, he looked really good.
It should scare everybody in the Pac-12. Little concerned about USC up front, abandoning gaps, getting pushed around a little bit in the running game by UNLV of all teams, who it should be fine offensively on the ground, but shouldn't be pushing around USC like that. USC did a good job getting after the quarterback. When he did drop back, Armani Rogers is not the most accurate, scary dude as a passer, but yes, USC eventually, and it's game one. We'll know a lot more about USC these next 2 weeks with Stanford and Texas on the road, but encouraging all the same given the relative greenery of this offense.
Washington State snapped a 7-game losing streak in season openers on the road. The last time they beat a team on the road in their season opener was back in 2004. And actually, they were sort of on the precipice of losing here. If it weren't for the fact that they kicked it into overdrive over the final 19 minutes or so, they outscored Wyoming 28-0 on way to winning by a 41-19 margin. Gardner Minshew is the new starting quarterback. He, of course, is the grad transfer from Eastern Carolina, threw for over 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns, as well as an interception. But this was a trendy upset pick here, Wyoming and their defense over Washington State. And it looked for a while like Wyoming might be on the way to pulling that upset, but then Washington State, good to see them sort of casting aside some of the questions about their program and the turnover that it had in the offseason and finishing this game strongly.
And refusing to snap the ball directly backwards and snapping the ball at a 45-degree angle for some strange reason. And it worked, which is fine. I'm fine with it. Minshew was only okay. He was fine. Not particularly efficient, but that's fine. A win is a win. They win by, 20 points. And I think the bigger story here is James Williams, becoming that guy at running back. And as we've seen these past few years, Washington's going to throw the ball a ton. The better they run, the more they win. So that is, no matter the tenets of the air raid and Mike Leach's air raid, the more successful they are on the ground, the more they control games. So good to see them being led by James Williams yesterday in a nice, new kind of thing, a road win to begin the season.
Cal knocks off UNC 24-17. Rough night for the Bauer Hour, who was subbed in and out because he wasn't all that effective.
Right.
Would you like to read? I don't know if you've got it at the ready here. I can do it if you don't. The first half drive chart for North Carolina.
I have it in front of me, Ty.
Okay.
All right, Ty, here we go.
Yeah.
Punt, 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 interception, punt, interception, touchdown, interception, punt, punt, end of half.
Yeah, not great. Not great, Dan. Not great. 24-17, California wins the football game. All right. Let's talk about UCLA. UCLA loses 26-17. Wilton Speight went out with a back injury, which means we saw a lot of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who showed some flashes. But moreover, I think what we learned from UCLA is that the Chip Kelly offense is going to take a little bit to install. We got the beach ball of death still spinning on the display here. And the install is going to take a couple more weeks, couple more years. What do you think?
Yeah. They do not have the storage right now. They do not have the gigabytes to run a fully updated, successful college football team. Yes, Wilton Speight goes down, which is, by the way, not that he was doing anything. It's just on a human level, kind of a bummer.
It really is.
Most of last year, getting hurt with a back injury, then goes down injured again. So yes, this UCLA offense is going to take time. Outside of that, I don't know. Is it Kazmir Allen? I hope I pronounced that first name correctly because I desperately want to say Kashmir Allen.
Sure.
Outside of his ridiculous run, he was like a track star in high school, won the California 100 meters. This offense was just a lot of mistakes from a lot of inexperience and a lot of guys getting used to a new system. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was thought of to eventually be the guy this season, but he is forced into action this week and doesn't look all that good. But they just have to keep playing him, obviously, get him more comfortable because the talent is there. But yes, we look at this game through the lens of like, UCLA is not that good. UCLA is going to take some time. Cincinnati was pretty good.
Yeah.
Michael Warren, was just a workhorse for them, kept moving the chains. They didn't get much through the air, but defensively they did a good job. And, a nice win for Luke Fickell, who has been yet to translate success on the recruiting trail to the field and to go to UCLA as Cincinnati did and win. It's a big deal. And hopefully it is the start of something more successful for the Luke Fickell era. But yeah, I was talking to somebody last night who is, all over West Coast practices and, covers the Pac-12. And they were like, yeah, I had before the season starting UCLA penciled in for 3-4 wins. And one of them was Cincinnati. So yeah, it'll probably be a long year, but hopefully I'll pay long-term dividends.
All right. BYU knocks off Arizona 28-23 in the late night Adam Amin game.
Yes.
Daniel. Khalil Tate held in check, had no runs longer than 10 yards in this football game.
No, it was very much a situation of, and I watched a chunk of this game this morning. They didn't want him running. It's like he wanted to prove that he was a passer. But yeah, Arizona looked disjointed. They got pushed around on defense. And obviously last year they were god awful on defense. So, maybe there are steps to be taken this year, but it didn't really happen last night against BYU. Tanner Mangum still in Provo. And, the only other thing I guess would be Khalil Tate. Thank God that Ken Niumatalolo, he prevented that from happening.
Oh God.
This is what you got, Khalil. You have the Noel Mazzoni era.
Arizona State wins 49-7 over UTSA. ASU had 9 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. Manny Wilkins looked pretty good. N'Keal Harry looked pretty good. They looked okay. Yeah, I felt pretty good about ASU in that opener.
Yeah, the concern for ASU is nothing really results oriented. The defense looked really good and new and confusing in a good way as they go to Danny Gonzalez's 3-3-5. The concern is the penalties. And it's just UTSA, and the offense showed out enough. But as concerned as one can be about slop in a 49-7 win, Arizona State has a lot to clean up.
Yeah.
They do.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And then the Colorado game. So much for that week 0 letdown spot, Dan. 45-13, Colorado beats Colorado State.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Montez, who many of our ballers have asked us to refer to as Stevie Montez, which I'm on board with.
Okay.
I will do. Stevie Montez only misses 3 passes, throws for 338 and 4 touchdowns. Traven McMillan, who I believe we last saw at Virginia Tech, 10 rushes, 103 yards, 1 touchdown. But more importantly, Colorado gained 593 total yards, which means that Colorado State has given up nearly 0.7 of a mile in offense. I believe it's 0.68 miles through 2 games of the college football season.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough year for this Ram defense. It's going to be a rough year for Colorado State, probably in general. And this is not a Colorado defense that was even below average last year. This was kind of a disaster of a Buffalo defense last year. Hopefully, and it's hard to immediately know, hopefully it's a sign of more improvement to come. Trevon McMillan was a nice addition in the backfield after Phillip Lindsay was so good for them for a long time. Montez, as you mentioned, great, for sure a dude in this game, if not for the fact that Laviska Shenault was just unguardable. And I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. I watched a chunk of this game on mute, so I can't speak to exactly how you pronounce it. KD Nixon, pretty confident in that pronunciation. Also very good for Colorado. But yeah, I would be more optimistic about this Colorado defense being at least average, below average, if they, want to get back to a bowl situation or a high level competition situation in the Pac-12 South. But yeah, Colorado State's got a ways to go. And we were both wrong about taking these Rams.
Yes.
I believe Colorado they have Nebraska next week, I believe, in Lincoln. So we'll definitely have a better sense next week. And I'm looking forward to that game even more now, given the fireworks from week 1.
Let me go rapid fire through the ACC. Not a ton to report here.
No.
And of course, the Florida State Virginia Tech game, as well as the Miami LSU game, are going to take place tonight and tomorrow. So we'll talk about those on Wednesday. But the most notable was Clemson knocking off Furman 48-7. We saw both Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence playing in this game. Trevor Lawrence looked really good, scored on all 5 of his drives. There is growing momentum for him to be the full-time starter, but we'll have to see how that shakes out. They've got A&M next week, which will give us a little bit of a better sense for how Clemson fares. But Clemson wins. Anything to add there, Dan?
No, not particularly. Clemson did what they should have.
All right, I'm going to rapid fire through this. Georgia Tech 41, Alcorn State 0, NC State 24, JMU 13. JMU actually gave NC State a game.
This was tight
for a little bit. Yeah, we already talked about Cal and UNC. Boston College wins 55-21 over UMass. Pitt wins 33-7 over Albany. Virginia 42-13 over Richmond. Duke beats Army. Wake ekes by Tulane on the arm of, and I guess legs of, Sam Hartman, their new one-man wrecking crew, in light of the Wolford wagon moving on.
Oh, and he's also he's their backup quarterback too.
And their backup quarterback. That's right. Yeah. And finally, Syracuse on the legs, apparently, of grungy Eric Dungy, who rushed for 200 yards in this football game. They win 55-42 over Western Michigan.
Yeah, and a ridiculous performance from Jamal Custis. I think who's from Philly. I want to say he's not local, but relatively local to you.
The only other game here that I've got penciled in is Boise State with a statement win on the road over Troy. They win 56-20. They led 35-7 at half. Brett Rippon had 4 touchdowns. Boise State forces 4 turnovers. This was, as I said, a statement win. They made no bones about the fact that they were the better football team here. And look, even those of us who liked Boise in this game didn't like them by 36 points over a really good team in Troy.
Correct. Very much correct. Brett Rippon, a ridiculous performance. Not the Madison Avenue performance that, I was looking for. But yeah, Brett Rippon having that 4-year starter going on the road to a somewhat tough place to play pays. Listen, he looked great. I have nothing more to add. And on the subject of Group of 5 stuff, UCF, Mackenzie Milton. He is so good, Ty. I know it's UConn. I know UConn's a disaster. I'm not overreacting to Mackenzie Milton in week 1 because I can overreact or just react properly to what we saw from him last year. Good to see UCF, defending national champs, come out, the Josh Heupel era, and just lay waste to somebody. Great. I love it.
All right. Any other notes here before we move to our dude alerts?
As I'm scrolling through here, yeah, I mean, there were interesting games worth talking about. I mean, Boston College, I think, looked really good against UMass, and that's not insignificant as BC looks to be sort of like not an ACC sleeper to win the ACC. Davis beat San Jose State. San Jose State's real bad. San Jose State is not worth talking about. Nevada looking strong in their opening week. Again, it's against an FCS team, but putting up yardage, I really want the Mountain West to be as fun as possible because I love myself some Mountain West football. No, I mean, we mentioned Rutgers being nice. I think that's nice with the true freshman.
King Arthur, baby.
Art Sikowski. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I think Ben DiNucci is starting at quarterback for James Madison.
Yep.
So that's a familiar name. I don't know how much we're going to talk about them moving forward. We also have some pretty significant Pat League action, Ty.
Oh, God.
We have some pretty significant Pat League action to talk about. The Gators, which we sort of all but locked up, but Lehigh over St. Francis, huge. Georgetown over Marist. What did I tell you about Marist, Ty?
You told it. Yeah, you called it.
I did my research.
Yeah.
Ow, I just hurt myself. The Gators look good against Holy Cross and the Crusaders. Sacred Heart laying waste to Lafayette, just ripping their arms off. Not what I anticipated.
No.
Charlotte just destroying Fordham. New York's one true team. I'm embarrassed as a New Yorker, Ty. I feel that as a New Yorker. Bucknell, I know you hold something against them, just succumbing to both Bill and Mary.
Yeah.
So disappointing opening slate for the Pat League, but that means they're only getting stronger from here.
They're only going to get stronger.
We're riding that wave. We have some dudes to discuss.
All right, lay it on me, Dan. Who do we got?
We didn't really discuss Houston, but De'Aaron King looked very, very good against Rice. Scotty Phillips for Ole Miss put on a clinic on the ground, which is still strange to say for the Rebels. Jalen Hawkins had a couple picks for Cal against North Carolina because somebody had to against this North Carolina offense. Rondale Moore, we mentioned for Purdue, a really impressive all-purpose effort. JJ Arcega-Whiteside for Stanford. KJ Hamler, who we discussed for Penn State, both in special teams and in the receiving game. I'm giving double dude for Will Grier and David Sills because their connection is palpable and real.
Yeah.
And everything we need in this ever-changing world. Kyler Murray, obviously, the efficiency is off the charts. Jay-Sean Jones, who you seem to be developing a little bit of a crush on.
A little bit, yeah.
For Maryland.
A little bit.
Cole McDonald, and everybody's making the Cole McDonald has an arm joke.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I approve, Ty.
Yeah,
You're going to be shocked to know.
I'm in.
I'm enthusiastically approving. A really nice one for Hawaii over Navy last night in a bit of a shootout. Dontavius Russell for Auburn was disruptive pretty much all day for the Tigers up front. Another double dude for Brett Rippon and Sean Modster. Great connection for Boise and Troy. Jalen Waddle, I mentioned, for Alabama. As if they needed more weaponry, gives them something kind of versatile and scary in the slot. And because I want to say it one more time, LaVisca Chenault for Colorado. LaVisca.
All right. So, well, wow. That was
a lot of worthy dudes. And I honestly, if I can add one more, just the entire Iowa defense.
Oh, they were good. So
that
good.
Is a freshly stocked store of dudes.
A dude store.
Yeah. Dude store. A dude emporium.
Dude emporium.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is fun, Dan. This is a longer show than usual. Longer weekend than usual. But a longer weekend. It's our first introduction to the 2018 season, so we wanted to do our best to run through as much as we could and at least as much detail as we could provide. Thank you to everyone who called in at 408-VERBAL-1. Listening to your voice messages and reading through your text messages, as always, is one of the joys of my weekend, my college football season, just getting to do that. And big thanks again to Taylor for cutting those up and putting those into some organized production. We appreciate it.
Definitely.
Don't forget, you can always email us at solidverbal.com. You can always find our shows where you can listen for free at solidverbal.com. We're out on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We've got a subreddit. And of course, you can download the show for free out on Apple or Google or Spotify or Stitcher or TuneIn. Wherever fine podcasts are sold, you can find the Solid Verbal for free. Danny, that's all I got.
That's everything I have as well. Should we? I mean, we need to keep adding to ways that people can contact us.
Sure.
Should we use one of those anonymous news tip, like secret pass key situations?
Our PGP key?
Yes, our PGP key, but not because we want tips about anything crazy or breaking news, just because we need ways for you to filter your thoughts to us. That's all.
Solid Verbal at Proton Mail. Yeah.
I like it.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrandt, thanks for bearing with us here in week 1. We're excited about the weeks that are to come. We'll catch you all on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.